Something extraordinary happened in West Africa on the morning of April 25, 2026. In the space of a few hours, one of the most audacious military offensives in recent Sahelian history was unleashed against the government of Mali. Multiple cities attacked simultaneously. A defense minister killed in his own home. Russian forces scrambling to hold positions they had spent years building. And now, a week later, the questions being asked across Africa and beyond are not just about who carried out the attacks, but who ordered them. Let us start with what happened. In the early hours of April 25, fighters from two separate armed factions launched coordinated strikes across Mali. The Al-Qaeda-linked group JNIM, which stands for Jamaat Nusrat al-Islam wal Muslimin, and the Tuareg separatist Azawad Liberation Front, known as the FLA, moved simultaneously against government positions in Bamako, Kidal, Gao, Sévère and Mopti. These two groups have historically competed and even fought each other, but on this day they operated in near-perfect coordination. Analysts described it as the largest rebel offensive since the 2012 uprising that began Mali's long descent into civil war. At approximately 5:20 in the morning, a car bomb was driven into the residence of Defense Minister Sadio Kamara in Kidal, the main military garrison town just outside Bamako. General Kamara was killed along with members of his family. At the same time, gunfire erupted near the presidential compound, around Bamako's international airport, and in the commercial districts of the city. Witnesses reported fighters dressed in Malian military uniforms entering Kidal, causing initial confusion about who was attacking and from which direction. In the north, the situation was even more dramatic. The city of Kidal, which Russia and Mali had recaptured together in 2023 after more than a decade of rebel control, fell back into rebel hands. Africa Corps soldiers, facing encirclement, accepted an Algerian-mediated agreement to withdraw. Russian and Malian forces also pulled out of Aguelhok, Tessalit, Tessit and Br. For Russia, Kidal had become a symbol of everything its partnership with the Mali junta was supposed to deliver. Within 48 hours that symbol was gone. The human cost was severe. Mali's intelligence chief Modibo Kone was injured, though he has since been confirmed alive, contradicting earlier reports. At least 23 civilians were killed. UNICEF confirmed children were among the dead and wounded. United Nations human rights monitors raised alarm about extrajudicial killings and abductions carried out by security forces in the aftermath, including the reported abduction of a lawyer and politician named Mount Aga Tall from his home by hooded men. Russia's Africa Corps, for its part, claims it killed over 1,000 attackers across multiple fronts. The Russian Ministry of Defense released footage of airstrikes, claiming at least 305 militants killed in strikes near Bamako. Joint Mali-Russia operations have continued daily since April 25, targeting militant camps in Mopti, Gao, Timbuktu and Kidal regions. Bamako's curfew, imposed on the night of the attacks, has since been lifted, and Russian forces escorted a convoy of 100 fuel tankers and 50 food trucks from Bamako northward on May 3 to resupply cut-off areas. The junta's grip on the capital has held. But the political fallout is significant. Assimi Goïta, Mali's military ruler since 2021, appointed himself defense minister following Kamara's death, his first major public act after briefly disappearing from view in the immediate aftermath of the attacks. Goïta met with Russia's ambassador to Bamako on April 28, signaling that the partnership with Moscow would continue. However, tensions between Russian and Malian military officials have quietly surfaced. Malian sources told the French outlet RFI that the governor of Kidal had warned Russia of the impending attack 3 days beforehand, and the Russians reportedly did not act on that intelligence. Russia, in turn, has pushed back, suggesting that Malian officers may have had contact with the jihadists before the attacks. Mali's military court has already launched proceedings against 5 soldiers, citing, quote, solid evidence of complicity. Now comes the most contested dimension of this entire story. Russia's Africa Corps, in its public statements, did not simply describe the attacks as a rebel offensive. They called it a coup attempt, backed by Western intelligence services. They claimed between 10,000 and 12,000 fighters were involved. They alleged that Ukrainian mercenaries participated in operations around Kidal and Gao, and that Western-origin portable surface-to-air missiles were used against Russian aircraft. Africa Corps further stated that confessions from captured militants had confirmed direct involvement by French and Ukrainian intelligence in planning and coordinating the attack. Mali and its alliance of Sahel states partners have echoed this framing. The alliance called the attacks, in their words, a monstrous plot backed by the enemies of the liberation of the Sahel. That language speaks directly to the geopolitical story Mali's junta has been telling its people for years, which is that the West, and France in particular, never accepted being displaced from the Sahel, and will use any available proxy to reclaim that influence. There is context for why this narrative resonates. France and the European Union did not leave Mali voluntarily. They were expelled. The EU training mission ended its 11-year presence in May 2024 after Bamako made it clear foreign Western forces were no longer welcome. The Takuba Special Forces mission was shut down even earlier when the junta chose Wagner over Paris. For millions of Malians who remember French military operations in the Sahel, the idea that Paris might work covertly to destabilize a government it considers hostile is not inherently implausible. However, no independent verification of Western or Ukrainian involvement has emerged. Ukraine has not responded to the allegations. France has not responded. The EU, meanwhile, condemned the attacks in strong terms and expressed full solidarity with the Malian people. Every confirmed actor in the offensive, JNIM and the FLA, is a long-standing indigenous insurgency with deep roots in Mali's own history, political grievances, and territorial ambitions that predate any Russian presence in the country by over a decade. An FLA field commander stated publicly that the offensive had been planned for months and that the next target was Gao. That does not sound like an improvised foreign operation. It sounds like a movement with a strategy. What is beyond dispute is this: Mali is in crisis. The junta's Russian security partnership, which was sold to the Malian people as a superior alternative to the West, has just suffered a major blow. Kidal, the crown jewel of the Russia-Mali alliance, is gone. The defense minister is dead. Dozens of Malian soldiers are being held prisoner by Tuareg separatists in the north, in footage obtained exclusively by Al Jazeera. And the same jihadist forces that Russia and Mali have been fighting for years have now demonstrated they can strike simultaneously in 5 cities, including the capital, in a single morning. Russia is not walking away. The Africa Corps remains active, with approximately 2,000 fighters currently on the ground according to Al Jazeera reporting. Airstrikes, joint patrols and supply convoys are continuing. Moscow's defense ministry has stated that its forces helped prevent a coup and stand ready to repel further attacks. But the question being asked by analysts from Brussels to Pretoria is a damaging one for Moscow's Africa ambitions. If Russia could not protect its most visible achievement in Mali, what exactly is it offering the governments of Burkina Faso and Niger? For Mali, the immediate stakes are territorial. Kidal is under rebel control. Gao is now the next target. The road networks connecting northern Mali to Bamako remain contested. And a government that dissolved all political parties just last year, extended its own mandate to 2030 without an election, and is now running a military court against its own soldiers, is doing all of this without the domestic legitimacy that would allow it to mobilize broad popular resistance. Who started this fire remains a live and contested question. But the fire itself is very real. And Mali right now is burning.